Excuse me. Before we get into this, maybe I thought it might be helpful to go over just a few house rules just to make sure that everyone has the most enjoyable experience that they can. Obviously, if you're not speaking, it's helpful if you stay on mute, but we also want this to be a very interactive dialogue. And so with that being said, you can always physically raise your hand if you have your camera on, and we'll certainly call on you. At the same time, there's a lot of boxes on this screen. And so if you have your hand raised and we don't see you, feel free to take yourself off of mute and say, hey, I have something I want to add, or I have a question, and we'll certainly let you in there. You can also use the chat box if you're more comfortable in that way. The chat box, you can access that by scrolling to the bottom of your screen, and probably right in the middle, you'll see something that looks like a cartoon little bubble. You can click on that and then type any questions you have that way as well. And lastly, you could also use the electronic raise hand feature. Again, if you scroll to the bottom of your screen and you can click on participants, you just click on your name and that participant roster log there. There should be an option that says more. You click there and raise your hand, and we'll see a little blue icon that will show up. So with that, we look forward to the next 2 hours. I think I have some robust conversation. Before I move on, I will be remiss if I did not thank my planning partners. I don't want anyone for one moment to think that I put all of this together. I had lots of great help. And so with that, I want to recognize Nancy Israel, who is the Executive Director of AEC. So Nancy, could you wave nice and high so people can see you and love on you? There you go. And then we have Missy Gupton from AGC, Virginia. Missy, can you wave? Thank you. And thank you both for helping us put this on. Without further ado, I also want to recognize that AGC has just hired a new CEO. If you remember, if you've been with us for many of our collaborations, we've been doing this for a couple of years now. It was Gordon Dixon, who has moved on to another experience. We're so grateful for all his work. And now his successor is Brandon Robinson, who I would love to introduce to you. And Brandon, feel free to wave and share a few words.
Thanks, Corey. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Robinson. I am on day 4 with AGC, Virginia. So very excited to be here. But as we were joking earlier, I think I just figured out where the bathrooms are this morning. So just learning about the organization and everything involved here. I've got, I'm not going to bore you with my resume, but been in the association space for about 15 years. And had the pleasure of knowing Nancy and Corey both for the last couple of years. So really excited about this partnership and getting to work in this role with all these organizations. And what really excites me too about this is thinking about this from our members' perspective. A lot of conversations about thinking about things not through our association lens, but our members' lens. So with that, I'm happy to be here, and hopefully I can get some softball questions, given that again, I'm just on day 4 here. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Corey.
Hey, Brandon, thank you, man, and welcome again to the team. We look forward to the strengthening the relationship between the 3 organizations that we have here. I thought it was also important to share just a little bit of the history on how our partnership has formed, and it actually formed through our Joint Owner Forum series. Many of you, I see some familiar faces on the line here, are familiar with that. The whole purpose of that initiative, which started back in 2018, was to bring together not only our 3 memberships, but to bring together those that hire us and engage in these conversations around the state with our clients on design and construction best practices from both perspectives, a 2-way street there. And then we'll always end with a networking social, and it became our marquee business development event, which is not something that a lot of associations do. It's always a lot of continuing ed and so forth, but what made this valuable is that we were positioning our members to form relationships with those who can actually bring revenue into the firm. In 2018, we started this, and we started with the state and institutional sectors. And so we brought to the table not only the Department of General Services, but also some of our state universities, our larger ones. And then in 2019, we moved and shifted, learning off of what we learned the year before. We started bringing local governments to the table. And so we had 2 great years of that programming. And then lo and behold, in 2020, we were hit with COVID-19, and things kind of came to a screeching halt. But we're at the point now where we get our feet back under us, and we're looking to see how we can pick this up this year with over the next 6 months and continue to bring people to the table. perhaps in a virtual setting. And so at the end of this program, we'll have a couple of polling questions that kind of get some feedback from this group on who you would like to see, what sectors maybe you would like to see, and how often to host these things in a virtual setting. Does that all make sense? You can nod, wave. Okay, cool. All right. And so, as I said, we had started that back in 2018. We're working in our third year. Both of those years were so successful, we said, what would happen if we all came together and did a joint conference based off of the same philosophies and principles that we did the joint owner forums? And so with that, I want to turn it over to our planning committee chairman, who his day job is the president and COO of Froling and Robertson, Mike Matthews. Would you want to share a little bit about the planning of our conference that we're anticipating in 2021?
You bet, Corey. Thanks a lot. Always want to start with the mission. The mission of the conference is to bring together architects, engineers, and contractors to collaborate, create, and build for the future. And I think if the committee coming together is any indication of what we can accomplish together as the three organizations, I think we're going to be doing really great, and this will be a great conference. So we're looking at this thing, and Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe or Corey, it's March at the Hilton, Virginia Beach, oceanfront. I think I got those two facts right. Okay. So we've had several meetings so far. This is a ways off yet, but you know, Nancy, if she's not a year ahead of it, then she's behind. So she's keeping us all moving. Some of the goals that we polled our members of all three organizations are to look at business development as something we want to be considering. Certainly networking is a great opportunity and bring everybody together. Having executive roundtables so we can share war stories, share best practices, those sort of things. And also have some speakers, presentations, and panelists. Some of the topics that we brought to the forefront so far that seem to be applicable to all three organizations and of interest would be risk management and risk allocation, design build P3, green design and construction, business development, leadership development, succession planning, management and HR issues. They're always popular. We all share those certainly. Mergers and acquisitions, and possibly some sessions on transportation and infrastructure. As we know, there's a whole lot going on down Hampton Roads right now. Some of the panelists we're talking about having kind of mocks or mimics rather some of the sessions that Corey was talking about. We're looking at possibly developer panelists, federal contracting, folks from the Corps, NAVFAC, various public works organizations, DGS from the energy sector, possibly higher ed. So I think there are a lot of opportunities to have owner panelists that we can all benefit jointly from. So again, I'm excited to be a part of this. I want to thank you all for the honor of letting me chair this committee. It's been a great experience, and it's going to be a really great event. So I hope everybody can show up for it. So thanks, Corey.
All right, thanks, Mike, and I appreciate your leadership and bringing the troops along as we plan this thing. So something to really look forward to. All right, so it's about time for me to get out of your way and introduce the main event to the stage. And I want to take a moment just to brag about him before I turn the mic over to him. Ed Gilligan, who many of you know, if you ever attended any of our joint owner forums, he's been our chief moderator for the last 2 years, and he's stuck with us. And I promise we don't even pay him. He just likes us. He has a 30-year career, of which about half of it has been split between the private sector and the higher ed sector. When he was working in higher ed, 10 years of that, he served as the project manager for VCU, as their director of design and research facilities, and did a bang-up job there, leading multiple marquee projects. And then from there, he went on to the Virginia Community College System, where he served as architect of the colleges and the chief deputy facilities officer. And under that portfolio, he managed all 23 Virginia Community College campuses, campuses of 40, I think, Ed, right? 40 campuses and 23 colleges. And so I had a really huge responsibility there before leaving that to become the principal of KOP Architects. What I enjoy most about Ed is that he gives back. So he does a lot more than his 9 to 5. Ed is a past president of AIA Virginia, and is finishing up an appointment by the Virginia Senate, where he's serving as the chairman, I believe, of the Capitol Square Preservation Council. So there's a lot inside and outside the office, and has become our resident moderator. So with that, Ed, I'm gonna turn it over to you, man, and have a great event.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Corey. It is truly an honor to moderate these events and be in the presence of so many of you who are my friends, but even engineers. I'm even friends with a lot of engineers. but certainly many contractors and of course architects. I want to take this opportunity to thank Corey, Nancy, and now Brandon for doing this and for really keeping us all in touch with each other during this recovery phase that we're in. I feel more connected than ever, and I think we might be onto something with these these electronic platforms, these Zoom meetings for future events. I know everyone would really like to get together in person. I sure would. I miss the social interaction, but I just really appreciate what these three have done. So most Zoom events or meetings of this type or this size are passive with panelists, and we're going to really try to do something different today, and we're going to make this as active as possible, given the platform that we're dealing with. So with that in mind, we really need you to raise your hand or take yourself off mute and speak up, because this is a true roundtable event today. So hopefully everyone got a copy of the agenda, and we're going to start with a group of questions that were sent in, and we'll try to get through these questions that were previously sent in. And if there's time, or if you just have something you want another question, you just have to get in. Just again, raise your hand. But we do appreciate all the questions that everyone sent in. So let's kick it off now with this section. It's called Firm Backlog and Economic Forecast. The first question: what is the business outlook from the perspective of the AIA and ACEC? Who would like to take that? It's kind of a loaded question here, because the next question is, what's the outlook from the AGC? Anybody? Bueller? Ah, okay. Charles. I am unmuting you.
I see we both clicked it, so we double unmuted, which meant I got muted. So I do nothing but federal government work. I'm a consultant. I've got I work with 5 different small architectural firms. Each one of them has a ton of work, and there's more work coming. It's into the fiscal year, they've got to spend money, and so there's still a lot of work out there. So business is booming from the federal government sector, from my perspective.
Wow. Any private sector AEs out there with a word on projects that are on hold, or future inquiries on future projects, which is where I think what we see we're down with future inquiries, and our firm managed to keep busy during the past 4 months.
And I'll tell you, just because I've been talking to a lot of different firms, that everything I hear at the moment is okay, but I think the structural engineers are starting to look at their backlog and not see a lot for 2021. I think the MEPs, depending on which sector they're in, anyone that does local work are waiting to see what the special session does. But I've had a fair amount of calls from those areas that do work, particularly with schools, localities, universities, all of those type of things. I think that they're looking really, they're worried.
They're worried. Yeah, and that's a great segue, Nancy, to the next question. It was sent in from Jeff Nelson. Which markets are going to provide the strongest recovery for Virginia? Healthcare, higher ed, K-12, commercial. There's got to be a backlog out there. Yes, Ken. It takes a while to unmute.
I did. I managed. I was going to answer the previous question, but I'll start with that one, which is, our feeling is all municipal and state funding will be dead for 36 months. Schools especially, unless there's some purposeful input into the system, some sort of stimulus. So, tax revenues are down. And what I'm finding is with clients, they're just distracted. They have no capacity. I was talking to a private school CEO yesterday. They have no capacity to even think about capital improvements right now. They're trying to figure out, tents and cleaning materials, and how to get more buses or fewer kids on a bus and more schedules, and they're just totally tapped out. So anyway, I think that the K through 12 and college university market's tough. We think development's tough. Healthcare and biotech seems pretty solid and strong. On the previous question, two parts. One is I'm on the National AIA AGC committee. The builders are busy. The architects are okay. We've had a bi-weekly call for the last 4 months, so we've been talking a lot. And in the last month, things are turning to the negative. So projects are stopping, projects aren't going. People are winning work, but the work's not starting. So it's just a real mixed, confusing bag.
It is.
Our firm, as a firm, we are 180% ahead of projections on wins this year. We are having not a good year, an extraordinary year. And that's with virtual interviews. And don't ask me, I've been very successful this year with virtual interviews. But we have offices that are in severe stress. Our Virginia office, we've won arts campus work and pharmaceutical work and healthcare work, things that that are unusual. So we're winning unusual opportunities that are large opportunities. So don't ask me why. We have always been counter-cyclical. So as a firm. So when things are great for everybody, we pretty much suck, and the other way around. So anyway, that's our take and my take.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's great input. Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Any other thoughts on the outlook here in our economic outlook? Okay, we'll move on to the next question. So this is, I'm not sure. I'll even take a shot at answering this, but what is the expected impact to the Virginia state budget and capital programs? So the General Assembly is reconvening in August, as I know most everyone has heard. We're not looking at a $1 billion shortfall. It's more like a $300 million, $250 million shortfall in revenues, which is still a shortfall. So my hunch is that Department of Planning and Budgeting is going to go as conservative as possible. Not knowing what the final quarter will, or at least or rather what the next quarter will look like, and the budget governor's budget will reflect accordingly. But I just took a shot at it. Anyone else, or maybe someone's in the know here that wants to share?
Just because I've been talking to the lobbyists about this, because I've gotten a lot of calls about this, and the shorter answer is no one really knows. Yeah. We do know that Aubrey Lane will be providing this year's revenue forecast, the first day of the reconvened session. So until that's out, even though there's a shortfall of 250 or 300 million from last year, the question really is, what's it going to look like for this year? And yes, they're definitely going to be conservative. But when I've talked to the lobbyists, because people are asking, hey, do they have any idea? Is money going to be moved? What's going to do? And the answer to will it be moved? Will it be reduced? Will it be this, that, and the other is yes, because no one really knows at this point. So we don't really know. We do know that they're going to focus on criminal justice and police reform. That's going to be a big thing, and everything COVID. And then after that, anything else that needs to be addressed with money, that's when we're going to find out. So, I mean, we could, if this group is interested, I'm sure that our group of lobbyists could very easily do a session for everyone after the special session as well.
Mhm. Very good. And this group does a great job of monitoring the situation with the General Assembly. So here's a private sector question from Bill Hume. What impacts are you seeing in the private sector regarding projects? And I'd mentioned before outlooks on private sector projects. Anybody here not do state or federal work? Develop what's okay? Hey, yeah. Oh, hey, how's it going? I am unmuting you, but there's a lag. Okay. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Try that.
There we go.
Gotcha.
Lost my cursor there. We do a lot of private work. A lot of what we do, I think, is the projects have been pledged, still in fundraising, and have been successful thus far. Of course, the peril with that is how the stock market does and how comfortable people are, I think, making pledges on projects for those sorts of things or donating wherever the source of income comes. So I think it's really day to day. Everything so far has been positive. With the stock market where it is currently, I think that's fine. We haven't heard of any panic yet. But as a lot of these private projects depend on funding from outside, I think we'll be monitoring that very closely to see if there are any really big swings, because that certainly is going to affect the money that's available and people's confidence in offering that money up. So I don't have any concrete data. This is just kind of a feel, but from our perspective, that's what we're seeing.
That's good input. Thanks a lot, Chris. It's Chris, right?
It's Chris, yes.
Chris, how have you been? It's been a while. But
Good, yeah.
good to see you. Any other comments from folks tracking the private sector?
And I wonder if anybody is heavy in the data center world. And it seems like Virginia would be poised to have that take off with the transatlantic cabling and so forth. And I could see data centers popping up over Virginia. Is anybody in that market?
Okay.
What about the firms that do a mixed bag of, you do a little bit of everything? Oh, here's someone. Miles has had commented on here that they perform MEPs on a number of data centers, but it's been a bit slow at this time. So there's at least one firm that does it. But we've got a lot of firms that are, full service or do a variety of things, not just state, not just local, they do public and private. What are you seeing there? I mean, some of you guys have got to have some information on that. You could put it in the chat box like Miles did if you don't want to talk too.
Yeah. A couple different avenues here to do this.
Hey, Ed, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Glenn.
Hey, sorry, I'm driving, so I didn't know how to raise my hand, but I guess that worked. We do a mixed bag of markets, and I think I agree with the couple things that I've heard. Federal government, they're going to spend money, and it's coming, and it's kind of in a flood at the end of the year. Healthcare, obviously, we see coming. Hospitality's cautious. Virginia Pilot today, 50% less than it was this time last year. But, what we're seeing is that there are owners out there that are liquid, that are going to take this opportunity to spend. And they're going to do it because their occupancy's down or because they feel like maybe pricing will be a little more competitive, and they're gonna, if they have money, they're moving it. If they're overly leveraged and they've got to go get traditional financing, it's going to be a challenge for them. So and we see that in hospitality, we see that in private student housing, multifamily even seems to be cautious, but moving in with the with that kind of mindset, and even senior living. I think that we haven't really seen. I think somebody made the comment the other day that a lot of customers have lost their focus on anything but COVID, and I would 100% agree with that. I think our economy is going to hit an 18-month slowdown, but everything was so strong before that it should pop right back and move right along, with the exception of maybe bricks and mortar commercial office space, which occupancy rates right now are probably below 50 and may not ever get back to what they were with everybody working at home. Just kind of our perspective across the markets.
That's very good. And I'd like to add that I've seen at least 2 non-capital projects and 1 capital project, all of them renovation projects at VCU, come in well under budget over the past 2 months. So one would think that owners would want to capitalize on that, on a favorable bid environment. Yes, Ken.
Yeah, I was talking to a leader at a large state-run mid-Atlantic university. Obviously I can't say who, but they had 3 $20 million-ish projects that were ready to go, and they were hesitant. And they said, well, let's try one, and it came in $4 million under budget.
Wow.
With 4 pre-selected builders, and all 4 builders were within 5% of each other.
Yes, yeah, that's what I've seen too. The numbers
it wasn't an anomaly. It was it's like, ooh. And that's what I'm hearing from AGC people. It's just subs are starting to get hungry real quick. Yeah.
So for the general contractors out there, are the subs driving this, or are you guys taking the hit? Y'all going in for just 5% profit or something, or how's that working? So Glenn, do you want to speak again for the contracting community?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's tough because somebody referenced in the last couple of months, I've heard the construction industry is like a squirrel in the road right now. Nobody knows which way it's going to go, and so there are trade partners out there and general contractors that are going to maybe get more aggressive and take work because they don't know what's happening. So we're definitely seeing a more aggressive bid market, more trade coverage, more people calling us that haven't called us for quite some time because either their sector or they're just concerned about what's going to happen 12 months from now. And it's a little bit concerning because people might take risks. The low number out there might be a great partner that does and not trying to. I don't think anybody's really ready to take work cheap, but everybody's a little more interested in pursuing work right now for sure.
Yeah. That's it sounds a little bit like recession mode, behavior, recession mode. Yeah, and Chris has got something. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of months ago, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, it's hard to tell, time's different now. The AGC put out something I don't know that I found very interesting that talked about that right now it seems like because there's such a pent-up demand, we're going to have fall off of opportunities. And certainly if you look on the hard bid market, through the Builders Exchange, those projects are really filled up with bidders, especially private opportunities. There are not very many of them. But going forward, what they were projecting and what I'm, I guess, passing on to my customers is what they also said is, if the economy does break loose and we're able to move past it, it's going to be such a pent-up demand, and there's already such a strain on skilled workers right now that we're going to have a short period of time where things are going to be very affordable, and it's a great opportunity now to either get your project going if you have that opportunity, or get your project shovel ready. Because once that wave starts, the market that's already strained for skilled workers is going to get even more difficult. And so we're going to snap right back on pricing. So now is the time to build or prepare to build. If you wait until after the bubble passes, then you're probably going to see a spike in your budget.
Mm-hmm. That's a good insight. Now's the time. Now's the time to move. Any other comments on that? This is where we seem to be at a tipping point here. Okay. All good comments. Thank you all. Thank you all for everyone who contributed to that. Next, our next group of questions pertain to firm leadership, leading a firm during current events. And the first question is, how are you addressing the recruitment and training of entry-level positions or interns in the virtual environment? Any AEs out there taking on new hires?
Oh yeah. So this is Charles. So the 5 firms that I'm working with all are hiring and doing it all virtually. Even their works, but so they're doing, the candidates basically have done their portfolios up on a virtual share screen type thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty cool. And then the interviews are all online. Walking through the portfolios and doing all the standard normal interview questions and things of that nature. And then the hires are just the same as normal through a letter. Then they come into the office one day to get their equipment and then they start working virtually.
Really? Wow. It's surreal, but it's where we all find ourselves.
I guess the follow-up question is that how's it working? I mean, some of the engineering firms I've talked to tried to do that, and they did bring interns on, and they basically decided they needed to have the young engineers, the interns in the office with someone to supervising them. So since you're doing remotely,
yeah, well, you might have seen me during that last set of questions not paying attention and talking on my cell phone because I was giving an intern instructions. That's what I was doing. I got Zoom over here. I got Teams over here, and I was giving him instruction on Teams with the floor plans called up on my screen.
Very, very good. Multitasking. We've some of us have gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And there's something in the chat box from, forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, Danian Gibson from ECS are also doing virtual job fairs and interviews and personnel recruitment. How's that working?
Good and bad. The job fairs, not good. Don't waste your money. People aren't showing up. They're making more money staying home. So we're doing the individuals, and then we do bring them in-house for training. We haven't changed a whole lot. We're wearing the mask and cleaning our hands and doing all the things we need to do to stay safe. But we've been trucking along. Yeah, so don't waste your time with the job fairs. People don't show up for those. But the one-on-ones have been good.
So thank you. Thanks. That's good. Probably good advice. Are those of us who have interns and have to really mentor them? And Charles, I know you just spoke about this. How's that working remotely? How's that working for you? Having to do this home and to their home. Do you feel like they have enough supervision during this time?
So this Charles again, it depends on the level, you know, and so obviously the more experience that the intern has, the better off you are, to be hands off. But I've always found that even in the office, you know, you gotta understand the level and the capabilities of each individual and give them the work assignments accordingly, and be over the shoulder, and just, you know, ensure that they know your expectations so that they can be successful in meeting those expectations. But you can't beat over the shoulder. There's no question about it. I mean, first few weeks, I really missed dropping by and looking over their computer screen to see, you know, and talk to the intern about it like that. But we've worked out the thing here using Microsoft Teams. You know, I can call him, he can call me immediately right on Teams. I can see who from my different teams are in the office, because there's a green light on by their name, and I'll just call them, and I'll just call 2 or 3 people at once if I decide to have a quick team meeting. Mm-hmm. But regarding the interns, it kind of depends on the level. Sure, you can't beat over the shoulder mentoring. But I've learned a heck of a lot of technical stuff from the interns. Oh, here's how to zoom in real quick and easy. Use your control and scroll on your mouse, and that'll zoom in. I didn't know that. You know.
Right.
There's another comment from Miles at Bowman Foster. They conducted multiple web-based interviews since March, and they're noticing an increasing number of interviewees are looking to telework instead of relocating to Norfolk.
Interesting.
Ooh. And so, okay, so what do firms think about doing that? Is that something that you guys are considering doing at this point with the way things are? I'd love to know that too.
Yeah, Ken, please.
We've had an acronym that we even trademarked called Single Firm Multi-Office for 20 years. And most of our hires in the last 8 months, so pre-COVID, are more senior people that are not in cities where we have offices. So we've been going down the path of virtual teams for so long. I think we will pick up speed on that front and start going. I know of 3 examples now where it's not more seasoned professionals, but mid-career. And I know that 4 or 5 of our offices have hired recent graduates that have just pulled them on board and started working. And everybody's still, we only have 3 offices that have opened their doors, and that was Monday. And of that, there's 9 people working in offices right now. So there's 1,000 that aren't. And so we see a huge shift and a lot of people working at home for forever. That's our take. We'll probably start downsizing offices as leases come up.
So this is Charles. So yeah, one of the firms that I work with, where I do have an office, I told him, hey, I'm loving the teleworking. I get more done. I don't have to deal with the DC commute. And he said, okay, fine. We're going to change your office into a hoteling suite. I go, good, fine.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that happening more and more. Especially with our larger firms.
This is Chase at Clark Nexon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, we just we're still looking to hire interns, especially probably going into the fall, doing mostly federal work at the moment, as Charles was talking about before, and anticipating the end of the year, end of the fiscal year, mass exodus of projects out of NAVFAC and Army Corps and into the industry. And we also did hire, right before we had a licensed architect that we were thinking about hiring that before all of this happened, and it just, the way it worked out, it was essentially right when he was about to start. That's when Armageddon broke loose. So we worked with him a little bit and kind of put it off a little, put his start date off a little bit. It actually worked out for him because childcare and things were still trying to be figured out. But once things started to open up a little bit, we ended up bringing him in, and he's doing a mix of work in the office and work from home, and it's been great. So
fantastic.
Obviously, depending on workload is how you're going to hire, but just like everything else, even work and mentoring and things like that, it's still getting done. It's just we're getting better at doing it differently.
Wow.
I mean, we've got multiple offices, and we were never, I'll admit, I personally, I was never really good at working with people that weren't in this office. Maybe it was just, I just didn't want to deal with the perceived hassle in my mind. But I think the situation has kind of forced us to get better at that. And we're starting to look at new things and new working paradigms that we weren't really embracing before.
Fantastic. That's great. We've seen that in our own practice. And hope to employ some of these telecommunication methods in the future, instead of having to meet face-to-face over every issue. So if another shutdown occurs due to COVID, how are your companies prepared to take on the expenses from having to lay off employees, or will you lay off employees? We're talking about round 2, when and if it happens. Anybody giving that any thought? This is from Ryan Bowden. There you go, Ryan. You have to answer your own question if you don't. If no one says anything. Just kidding.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm with Aerotech. We're a staffing and recruiting agency. I'm located in Roanoke. A couple of my clients, I work in the construction industry. A couple of my clients have been concerned about possibly having to lay off some folks and what those costs would look like. Wasn't really sure if that'd be too relevant here. Just wanted to shoot that out there.
Hey, Ed, I can speak directly to that question a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, Nick.
It's great to see you. So HKS had, I want to say about a 10% layoff / furlough when this all started back in March. And we were hoping that would be the end of it. That was about 150 people across all of our offices. Like Ken was saying, for Canon, we're built the same. We're one firm. So if we're all doing well, we're all doing well, right, across all offices. But if one office is hurting, we're all hurting. So as you all know, HKS is a big sports and entertainment, district, as well as hospitality. So since those two are being hit so hard, even though healthcare has kind of offset that for the firm, we've been struggling a little bit. And so what we did as well is we instituted salary reductions based on your role across the firm. And what we were anticipating to do was restore those salaries at the end of Q3. But to prepare for the second round, we're not going to reinstate them until at least the beginning of next year. So that's one strategy we're looking at across the firm.
Very, very good. Well, at least you guys are being proactive about this and understand what's happening real time.
Yeah, I'll give Dan a lot of credit. He's our CEO. He acted quickly and swiftly and thoughtfully back in March to try to kind of right the ship for the long term. So
tough times. Anybody else have any comments on this topic? Let's hope we don't have a round 2 here. Everyone, wear your masks. There's a question that came in about best practices, and I'm gonna read it. I think it's good, and this person just wants some input. And they say, I hear one person saying they are using Teams software successfully now that people are remote. How many have started using this platform, and what other collaborative software platforms are firms using to do shared work, non-client communications? This is really the foundation for all kinds of work in the future now, post-COVID. So thank you, Anne, for sending that in. Anybody want to talk about, what have you found to be the best platform in our office to use? I've used two to work on two separate projects, Zoom and I believe it was the Microsoft. Let me look down at the bottom of my screen here. I've got the thing. What the name of it is? Anyway, it's the Microsoft product.
Yeah, the Microsoft product is Microsoft Teams.
Yeah,
and that's one that I use with 3 of my firms. And so it's really a logistics nightmare, which, because I've got to have 3 different Microsoft accounts, or not one Microsoft account, but I have 3 different logins since I'm a consultant to multiple things, and the firm owns the Teams Microsoft. So you've got to be logged into the appropriate Teams group to be able to use those, which is fine, and it works. My government clients use Google Meet. They use GoToMeetings, and they use Zoom Gov, and all of those work very, very well. But they pretty much, to initiate the meetings, some of the Teams works great for screen share, which is the vital aspect of it, and giving the other person control of the mouse so they can show you what they're pointing at. But if you're outside of that organization, you can't share your screen or take control. So that's a limitation on that one. So I think the first software company that tackles that problem is going to be the one moving forward.
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple people chiming in here. They're working with Teams also. BIM 360, Nextcloud, Delta, Ajira with a custom built SQL SharePoint connector. We don't have that one. Anyone using Slack out there? Good or bad results? I've not heard of Slack. Okay, yeah, Ken says he's used it. Anyone using Bluebeam Studio with Revit? There you go. All right, we've got two who've done that. Screen sharing live is the future for sure. And Nick says Amiro and Whiteboard are amazing tools for collaboration. Thank you, Nick. And someone posted a link. Hopefully you can get to the chat. Are y'all able to see the chat on your screen? So you can see there's a link there to Merle.com.
Hey, this Ken. I gotta say, Miro is amazing, and it's a lifesaver. I mean, I can sit with 3 people and we can draw on the same drawing at the same time.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. All right. So definitely check that link out.
It has been in the last month, and you can have a client. We don't let the clients draw yet because there's a licensing hassle. Yeah. But it's, you can have stickums. It's really powerful. And we're giving tutorials to clients on how to use it so that we can get up and running. It makes working at home a breeze. So wow. And it links with Teams in a nice way, yep. In very positive way. We have other people in the firm that love Whiteboard, but I like Miro a lot.
Uh-huh. Well, that's good advice. That's a great takeaway, Nick.
It's embedded in Teams as an app. It's really quite fantastic. And what I'm missing the most from not being in the office is that collaborative kind of environment, being, locking arms and looking at an opportunity together, right, in real time. That app kind of allows that collaboration.
Yeah, this is Brian Snyder with Clark Nexon. I want to tout a little bit of Teams, the Microsoft Teams software abilities, especially for design build projects. where we wouldn't have been able to work, in the office with our contractor partners anyways. But everyone going to Teams now, if you're trying to combine organizations to collaborate on things, share files, Teams is very convenient, especially if you use the same login. You go to the top right of your Teams interface, and you can change which team you're in really quickly. The alerts and the way the chats work has really helped save on a number of emails that need to be sent during all of our design build pursuits.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good.
Have you guys also used the file aspect of Teams? I've never tried any of that. All I've done is screen share.
Oh no, it's great. It's the only way we've shared files back and forth with our design build partners. Everyone can see all the files up to date. You can comment, you can add links to things within the chats.
The Teams file sharing is essentially old SharePoint, but it's hidden. So it's just called file sharing. So it was there before Teams. So they rolled SharePoint into Teams, and they just call it file sharing now.
Well, right. So we actually had a major national GC kind of open our eyes to a lot of the things we weren't using Teams to do. We were just using Teams kind of for an internal chat, both in the office and among offices. Internally to Clark Nexon, and we had a kickoff meeting right before all of this started for some pursuits. They asked what people suggested. We said we like Teams. They jumped right into it. They weren't even using it yet. Figured it out. Set up the site. Set up all the folders to share all the pricing documents. All of the correspondence, like Brian said, was in one place. So you didn't. I think he was the PM on this pursuit, and I think he said he only got a couple hundred emails over 8
weeks,
over
300 emails,
which would have been
thousands.
Yeah, couple thousand probably among all the different.
From a knowledge management, you could bring someone new and you could see everything. You weren't worried about missing an email from a chain. So that's proven its worth, especially during COVID.
This is Ian. I work with Brian and Chase at Clark Nexon, and I was the architect they were mentioning earlier that got brought on board during COVID. And I
didn't want to call you out, Ian.
with Teams before, but it's been very helpful in getting on board with the company. So I think Teams is a great program.
Thanks, Ian. I didn't want to call you out without your knowledge. So.
Great. I've got another question that's pertinent. I think this is the right time to ask this. What has improved in your firms over the past 4 months, and what flaws have been revealed? That's probably the good time to talk about communication. Anybody have had improved communications over the past 4 months? Just curiosity thing.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. I mean, we are one firm, and we've collaborated across offices for
please.
For a long time. But I will say it's been quite fantastic to be able to communicate so easily with everyone across the firm, right? So we're more open to have, leadership meetings, practice leadership, conversations. So this has allowed even more communication, and it's opened up opportunities. It's opened up knowledge sharing. It's opened up best practices. It's opened up, really innovative thinking. So I've been quite impressed with the increase in how we communicate with each other, even more so than when we did before. So it's been quite fantastic.
Anybody have any flaws that were revealed? Any IT issues that had to be? For me, it was bandwidth in this house, but we fixed that immediately.
I agree that the connectivity has actually improved. I feel like I'm seeing more people face to face. We have several offices across the Mid-Atlantic. And so to be able to connect with people in a different office whose faces I might not have seen before, I feel like we're beginning to default to doing video calls as opposed to sending an email. And if you're going to send that instant message, you might as well just click the video and connect visually. I wouldn't call it a flaw. I would call it more of a learning curve and learning how to engage a larger audience, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a presentation, you're doing some sort of training, because it's so easy to tune out, especially with sort of the Zoom overload. You're spending hours of time in these sort of video conferences. So maintaining engagement from your audience was an initial challenge. And one of the best tools I found for that is sort of the interactive online polling. I like Menti. You can use it for anything from quizzes to, you know, multiple choice selections to just audience feedback. They've got sort of a word art tool so that the more people that type in the same answer to a question, that word gets bigger and bigger. And it's just a way to engage the audience and keep them engaged. They can do it on their phone while they're also on the call, but having those things throughout and not letting too long of a period of time separate the audience from interaction so that they're constantly engaged. And I would say an added, maybe unexpected benefit to those sorts of platforms is there is a feature of anonymity, so that people are free to maybe say something. Menti's anonymous. They can vote on different things without it being really attributed to them. So you get more of a group thinking and brainstorming collaborative feel in a way that you might not have previously.
Great. That's good input. Thanks, Shambi. Thank you. Yeah, Chris.
I had the opportunity to sit in on a couple of presentations as an observer, and also attend a couple of meetings. And one of the biggest challenges that we've seen is some of the meetings will take place in person with social distancing, mask, and that sort of thing. But there's always a couple of members of the audience who are coming in through Zoom. And what I have seen is that there is always a technical glitch when trying to present PowerPoint and keep someone engaged on Zoom. So the workaround of that has been obviously trying to get there early and set up, but also to bring along your IT specialists, especially if it's an important presentation, so that those glitches can be fixed on the fly. And that seems to have worked out pretty well.
That's good advice.
Yeah, another one that I did actually this morning, a client called and wanted to do a quick presentation meeting. So I pulled together a presentation and then without testing any of the connectivity. And so we did a team screen share, but only about half of the invitees could see the screen. So I learned from my government clients who do GoToMeeting that they have both methodologies set up, where you can do the join the meeting or make the call. So I went ahead and put the invite. Okay, if you don't have screen share and all this other kind of stuff, you know, the chair, I'm going to attach the files that I'm going to be talking about. They all have page numbers. And here's the dial-in number if you're doing audio only. Then you just open up the file, and I'll tell you when I'm doing the presentation and walkthrough what sheet I'm on. And that worked.
Very, very good. A lot of good advice and some lessons learned here with this group.
I wonder if, you know, as leaders in your respective organization, like having to have a heightened awareness to the people management side of things, so like having more empathy. So like during this time, if you are single, right, and you're in the house by yourself, how do you prevent folks from working 60 or 70 hours a week? They have nothing else to do. And on the flip side, you know, those who have young kids and don't have access to childcare right now, how do you prevent people from beating themselves up and working 15-hour days because they're just not that productive during the day? So I'd be curious to kind of hear what firm leaders are doing in that respect in terms of trying to maintain a positive organizational culture.
That's a great question, Corey. We've conducted surveys every single week since we started, and our research group has distilled that information to create a next-gen flex work environment for us, which is really quite fantastic. But as you know, every person in their needs are quite specific, but there are groups of individuals, like you had stated, that we can kind of hone in on. And I think it just comes down to true flexibility, accountability, transparency, communication. We've been really good about, you know, having a little bit of framework from Big HKS, but then also being mindful of the specific needs of each office, and then down to the specific needs of each team and then the individuals. So we've really taken that to light and focused in on true flexibility and accountability. So.
There was a question down down a bit about morale. Let me see. How do firm leaders balance difficult decisions with firm morale? Are you? What's the vibe out there? Is that one no one wants to take? Okay, there's a question that has come in through the comments. Is anyone trying new kinds of partnerships or collaborations? Architects, engineers, contractors, combinations, design build entities, what have you, during this period as a way to pursue work and to be more competitive? Anybody engaging in a unique LLC or some newly formed group? Joseph McCoy, asking for a friend.
Hey Ed, I think if I may, I'd like to take the morale question because it's quite important. I'm really in tune with kind of the mental health of everyone at work, and it can be pretty daunting after 4 months of working from home and isolation and that sort of thing. So we've done a lot of different things over the course of 4 months that we've felt have been successful. So the first is actually just reaching out on a personal level, one-to-one. Our office director has taken that on herself, which is really quite fantastic, just checking in every week, one-to-one, to make sure everybody is doing okay. Our meetings, first 10 minutes, we just have kind of an open question, how's everyone doing, right? Just to show that empathy and make sure that everyone is kind of doing okay. And we're also planning socially distanced with masks summer event in a park, right? So, you know, the ability to kind of bring us together physically in a very safe, conscious way is very important to us. We usually do that every year, at least, you know, twice a quarter. So keeping that culture is very important. But, you know, checking in and just, you know, forgetting about work for a minute and knowing that we're all human and we're really missing that physical, social kind of interactions is very important right now. So.
Yeah, this is Brian Snyder, Clark Nexon. We've had little pockets of, like you guys have said, the interactions have kind of had to been more intentional. So there's a Clark Nexon Run Club that's popped up that people hold, you know, comment on runs they've done and trying to get people interacted that way. There's been a book club that's popped up. So people read different books and kind of spend some time talking about things outside of work. And I've also seen some people doing lunches, you know, coordinating a meeting from 12:15 to 12:45 where you don't talk about work, you just catch up, trying to maintain those relationships. It's kind of been, you know, experiment, kind of organic, nothing really top down about it.
Well, and not to oversimplify it, but it almost seems like the extroverts are suffering and the introverts are thriving. I mean, if many of you, like Damien Seitz in our office, he's been miserable this whole time. If anyone who knows Damien, so he's on calls with everybody in our architecture department as much as he possibly can get on phone calls with people just to have that connection with people. But there's a certain contingent of people that are perfectly fine working at home. They feel connected. They're fully productive. You know, I personally don't like it. I've come to Damien and I've been coming to the office the whole time because I just can't. I need some kind of physical connection to the environment to keep working. So I think a lot of it depends on your personality type and how you work best.
Yes, Kristen. Go ahead, unmute. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I know at F&R, and shout out to Shambi as well, she hosted weekly, you know, happy hours or game nights and used the Menti platform that she talked about and really helped connect all 12 of our offices. So, and really, I think it was like the second week we were home, she was like right on it and was really there for everybody, connecting everyone. So that was a big plus for us.
Very good, very good. A lot of creative ways to stay connected. to some, you know, I know people are, you know, they're coworkers, but they're also friends. Anybody else?
I would say now is the time for storytelling. Now is the time to celebrate our unsung heroes.
Yeah.
So we're a testing and inspection firm. We also do geotechnical engineering, but there's a lot of our folks who never stopped. Our guys were in the field, our guys were in the lab. Lockdown happened, we never stopped working. And it's a great time to celebrate everybody at every tier of the company. And so telling those good stories, asking for those stories to tell, and then spreading them throughout the company. It's the news is bombarding with the negative and the hype. And so anything that you shine a light on with a little bit of positivity, it just radiates. Mm-hmm. And if you can sort of perpetuate that culture in your company of let's celebrate the good, let's call attention to the good things that are happening on our job sites, these techs that are going out in the field, the guys in the lab, you know, what good is happening, and seek it out. And it takes asking for it. Tell me your good stories so that we can share them. But really seeking that out can pivot the culture. It can pivot the feel of a company so that it's a change and people want to share, and the recognition goes such a long ways. But I think really focusing on the good is so important right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for saying that.
Hey, Ed, I would just make an observation listening to the comments over the last couple of minutes. And I think Shambi kind of hit the nail on the head about culture. You know, there's that age-old business adage, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what all, it seemed to me at least, what tied a lot of the comments or what different folks are doing was it was all about supporting the people and creating a positive culture around their people. And whether that's using this platform or, you know, someone said making sure they have the right materials at home. In the comments, other people are talking about the happy hours and thinking about, well, we've got introverts, we've got extroverts. All of that was about seeing people and creating a culture around the people, because at the end of the day, the people are who do all of that. And that's just really encouraging to kind of hear and see that among all these businesses across. So not really an addition, but just kind of an observation on some of the comments.
Yeah, but these activities will pay dividends later on. So hats off to you guys. Yeah, Ken.
I think we've done everything that everybody said, and I can encourage everybody to continue to do it. We've been conscious about the first 60 days, the next 60, 70 days. And, you know, we started out having 3 meetings a week, a staff meeting and a midweek check-in and a happy hour on Friday. And, but we've purposefully changed that every 60, 70 days. And part of that is, these can get tedious. The other is we're pretty certain we don't have it figured out yet. So, so we want to just keep trying stuff. And we designate different groups of people to say, you take on this meeting for the next 60 days and kind of do whatever you want, because there's really no wrong that you can do. So it can suck, but it's not going to be wrong. So, and the feedback's pretty obvious pretty quick. So that's what I think is just keep trying stuff. This is going to go on for quite a while. You know, we have people that will not be able to come back to work until there's a vaccine. And so, you know, that could be a while. So, you know, even if there's half the people back in the office, that means half the people aren't. And so we're thinking you need to change it up every once in a while. And what that means to different organizations, that's the culture part.
Right. Good, great discussion. Absolutely great discussion. I'm glad we went there. I'm going to jump ahead in the agenda past the best practice exchange and jump into the working together to influence the built environment. And let's start with a GC question. What are the biggest contractor concerns related to COVID-19 impacts to construction work? What are suggestions for mitigating the concerns? Are there any recommendations for productive engagement of architects, engineers, owners when these groups can't be physically present on the construction site? And thank you, Joseph McCoy, for sending this in.
Yeah, Ed, I can jump in on that. This is Glenn Thompson.
Yeah. Thanks, Glenn.
Probably our biggest concern on the, COVID is these delays. Project delays are not compensable. And for most public contracts, it becomes like a weather delay where you might be forgiven the time, but you're not going to get paid your extended general conditions and your costs out of pocket to cover that. So what happens in the future, and how do you account for that? I'm not sure it's fair for the contractor and the trade partners to take that risk over, and I'm sure the clients, the owners don't want to have to pay that either. But there's got to be a vehicle for that moving forward, because right now it's just kind of wash your hands and do what you need to do to get it. So that's a collaborative discussion that could be had on a higher level. I think that would bring some benefit.
Well, have you seen delays due to outbreaks of the virus, or how have you been affected?
Absolutely. I mean, from anywhere from having to shut projects down because of an outbreak for testing and cleaning and those items, for specific crews that would, a lot of folks travel together. So you might have a specialty crew that travels together. One of them gets it and the rest of them are quarantining. And, trade partners don't have extra crews sitting on the bench that could just show up and complete their work, especially when it gets towards the end of the project where everybody's stacked up. And the initial impacts of actually transforming job sites into safe working environments in this post current COVID world, where additional wash stations and distancing and all the things that you have to do to try to protect the worker, which is obviously all of our safety plans. That's what everybody's geared for, is to protect the workers and send them home every day the way they got there. But it's definitely impacted productivity in all those ways.
Any other contractors have some comments or some advice, or what would you like to see AEs do differently, or how can we engage our users, our clients, our owners differently? Sounds like that there's a lot at risk if you have to shut down a site because of an outbreak. I could see that's you're losing not only productivity, but you're spending money to clean up, all unanticipated. Okay. Well, here's another one going out to our contracting community. Are there any recommendations for productive engagement of architects and engineers or owners when these groups can't be physically present on the construction site? Has anyone had any problems where you just have to put eyes on it, or at least once I had an owner going around with a tablet showing me something that had to happen right now, I think owners are getting it too. They've had to adapt.
So this Charles. So yeah, I've been doing lots of virtual construction site visits. You did punch virtually. Fortunately, you had a construction manager who was local that was able to be there and do the camera work. So I just told him, hold steady. Let me take a screenshot of that so I can have it for my punch report. It's not as good as eyes on. I'd much rather be there to see the whole thing. But I did, say, okay, I need to look at ceiling. I need to look at cove. I need to look at the outlets over there. I need to look at the hardware. Just directing them all over the place, looking at all the things I would normally look at. So anyway, I'd much rather be there doing it myself.
Yeah. Any other comments there? Yeah, Ken, please jump in. Please jump in if I don't see you waving.
Missy may be able to provide everybody this, but on one of my AIA AGC calls, there was a legal guru who pointed out there have been 3 or 4 court cases in the last 90 days that have kind of started to establish that a video review of a site by an architect does not meet the standard of care. So people need to have an understanding in writing with their owner and their builder that we're not allowing our people to go to sites unless there's a real serious discussion about safety. And so, I mean, all that's got to be in writing. And so there are some really thorny situations around going to sites, and there's case law being built as you go. And I think the AGC is the go-to source on a lot of that. They're really on top of it, has been my impression. So much more so than the AIA. So they just have, their people have been on the ground since day one because, you know, construction was considered vital from the start. So they've been dealing with challenges that the rest of us that sit and draw have not had from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, you definitely have to strike a balance between, you know, keeping our architects and engineers safe and providing the standard of care for CA services. Difficult times we find ourselves in. I don't know, anybody from the AGC or can speak on what you'd like to see or what's been your experience on managing our construction sites? Mainly, regarding site visits for construction administration. Okay. Well, here's a good question. Do you think the design build project delivery method will be utilized more because of COVID? And that comes to us from Eric Turner. Thank you, Eric. Also, does the pandemic change the landscape for the use of design assist or CM at risk? And that's from Nathan Wethington. Our firm finished bridging documents for a design build project. We may see more of this. What's everyone seeing out there?
I'll just jump in and say yes and yes. That I've won 4 projects, 2 of them are design build, and the 2 big ones are design build. So, the team is spread all over the country, and it doesn't make a darn bit of difference. So, and I think there's a third option. We're seeing huge interest in modular construction because the work is done in a factory, which is technically safer.
Yeah.
Construction site. And so we're seeing huge interest in modular construction, and we're in that world deeply. So that's been one of our big growth areas. In the last
so what's for modular? I'm interested in modular construction. What sectors are you seeing this?
Pharmaceutical, housing, hotels, dormitories, and offices. So anything that you can figure out how to make, 25 of, repeat. And it's panels, and from panels to rooms to bathrooms to components. So we're agnostic when it comes to, we're not a product-oriented modular. It's a process-oriented modular. I know HKS is deep into that world too. So.
Yeah, and we cross all sectors too, like Ken was suggesting, healthcare for nurse stations, rooms, that sort of thing, and then even modular facades for commercial, mixed use, all across the board. So it's quite exciting, actually.
I'm curious. With this are these modules, do they include full MEP?
Yeah, and electrical. The ones that amaze me, and I'm new to this world, are clean rooms where they build it from the ceiling down. Figure that out. So you have they put a ceiling in, and then they bring the walls in, and nobody ever has to go in the room. That way it stays clean.
Crazy.
It's just freaky. It just freaks me out completely.
Yeah.
So, but it's amazing stuff. And
of course, this is driven through BIM. And we have another question here. How's the integration of BIM between the AEC industry progressing? What can be improved? That comes to us from Chris Stone. Thank you, Chris.
It's not fair. I have to answer my own question.
Yeah. All right. Good. Thanks for doing it. Yeah. If you send it in, you got to answer it.
No. If you send it in, you're asking it. You don't have to answer it.
or at least fan the flame.
That's right. So no, I'm going to let others try to respond to that.
Anybody? Okay.
I think Chris has it.
Yeah.
What we've been doing lately, and I have found to be very helpful. My role is director of pre-construction. So I'm all about numbers and takeoff and trying to get that done as efficiently and effectively as possible. And what we're seeing with BIM is we are now asking architects to provide a DWFX file for us for our software that we use, and also a SketchUp model. Both of those together, along with what we also use, which is on-screen takeoff, really help out. The BIM model as created is not always ideal for quantity takeoff because architects and engineers don't design it for quantity takeoff, but oftentimes it's very helpful. So those three things together are really starting to sort of revolutionize for me the process of quantity takeoff. But it has to, all the information that we get from the architects has to be inspected to make sure that we understand what we're looking at, because it's very easy to get lost in the details and lose a lot of important information or quantities or make really huge mistakes. But we are definitely moving in the right direction. I do not believe we're going to be ever to the point where we can just push a button and have an estimate, but anything that we can do to cut down on the quantity takeoff time without losing learning the project is a step in the right direction for us on our side. So
that's great. Would anyone else like to add anything to that? There's another.
From an architect's perspective, the realizing that BIM is not, especially, I'll just say Revit for the moment, the way architects use it, the reason it can't be used for quantity takeoffs is because we have to balance, really our legal deliverable is what's on the paper. And a lot of times you need to do certain things to a BIM model to make it appear right on the paper as opposed to how it appears in the model. So that's always kind of a thing that can point in opposite directions, even though the model is a deliverable as well. But many times, and again, just playing devil's advocate, many times you've got to get it to look right on the paper first and foremost, and that is in deference to how it looks in the model.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Another question here. How is the time frame for the production of design documents being impacted by COVID? The AEs out there struggling? Seems to be going a little slower.
So the one thing we've talked about in-house isn't necessarily right now, but it's like in the fall when school starts, how that all impacts how things play out. If you're having to do dual duty, have kids at home, and also getting work done, you have to acknowledge that as an extra stress on your staff, that they're not going to be at 100%. And how do you resolve that, consider that? And I think that will end up having to, the more prepared you are, the better conversation you can have with clients about the reality of work throughput, and not trying to force things into a situation where you can't really be successful. It's just, we've had some conversations, nothing's really panned out quite yet, but that's kind of on our minds.
And this is sort of along the same line, but the question is phrased, will COVID change our workplace? It has changed our workplace, but will we be able to take advantage of the current changes so that it becomes the new normal, all the good stuff that we're learning? I'll speak for the group. Yes. This is directed to no particular group, but how are you leading the charge in transforming building environments and the processes for health in our communities, or to create healthy communities? This is from Amy Eichenberger. Maybe Amy, is Amy online? Maybe Amy can explain the question a little bit better.
So this is Charles. So I'm the chairman of the National AIA Federal Architecture Task Group. We've been having all of our meetings for the last, obviously, 3 or 4 months have been focused around COVID. And what can we do? Now, the AIA has done quite a lot already. We've done checklists for opening buildings and things of that nature. So I'd never done much on LinkedIn, so I started publishing that stuff up on LinkedIn to share with other folks. The AIA, everything that the AIA has done, put links up there and things of that nature. And with AIA, I'd like to find out what Ken, I told those guys on my call, the staffers there, that, hey, we want to get involved and come up with some, what are the big picture solutions that we all need to take advantage of here in Brainstorm? Just like, this call, great job, Corey, and everybody that put this together. This has been fantastic. So
well, thanks for saying, Charles. We and thank you everybody. You've been so giving with your experiences and sharing, and to the benefit of our community. It truly is a small community that we have, the AEC community. One question that has come in through Zoom chat: is anyone dealing with COVID-19 as a potential workman's comp claim in an office or on a construction site? Anybody contracted the virus and seen that? Yes. So Ken, yes.
Thankfully, no. But again, on my AIA AGC call, there were 2 or 3 states that where somebody went to work, got sick, and they determined that OSHA eligible, and because they caught COVID. Now there's no way to prove they got it at work versus on a bus going to work, but that was ruled an OSHA eligible thing. That freaked out a big chunk of the industry. So I don't know where all that's going. Nobody does, but Virginia has not been one of those states, that I do know, and I don't know what they were. But again, I think somebody's tracking that stuff.
Thank you. something to consider, something else for us all to consider.
Ed,
Yes.
just want to let you know, and we received a notification from the AGC, and they're going to be talking about this, about the new emergency standards that have been put in place by the Commonwealth of Virginia here. And I was listening to that. They have an upcoming discussion on that, and lo and behold, this morning on the way in on the radio, I heard a discussion about that as well. 35 or 36 pages of regulations effective Monday. Virginia is the first to provide that nationwide. These are all affecting a COVID response to the workplace, and essentially coming down pretty hard on the employer side of having to provide training, having to have a written policy in place. And this affects all workplaces. And one of the questions that came up was regarding liability. And there hasn't been a nation, there have been discussions, I think, about indemnifying employers. Virginia, at least, and it's still being thought about and worked out, because when laws and guidance comes out, there's always 1,000 questions. And thankfully, the AGC for the contractors has been leading the charge for us to try to figure out what that means, but we don't know yet. So just not to get into too much detail, or 4 risk categories set up, and 2 of the 4, the highest, which are involving direct contact with COVID victims, such as intubation or just caring for, if those workers contract COVID, it is automatically assumed that they had got that COVID infection from the workplace. There's a presumption. For categories 1 and 2, I don't think that is explicitly talked about. Bottom line is, according to what I heard from this consultant on the radio this morning, who is a lawyer, come Monday, everyone in Virginia who's an employer is supposed to be following these guidelines, and they're actionable. So we're certainly looking into that. We're looking forward to the AGC's guidance. One of the things they did for us before was to provide a template for some of the things in the workplace, policies and procedures. One of the things I was going to ask Missy about, or anyone else who's available from the AGC, Brandon, is something similar going to be coming from that, or y'all, this is all very new and very sudden. So are y'all reacting to this? Is that something that you're going to be looking at? But this is something that affects everybody who is an employer.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is, yeah, as you noted, I believe we sent out something, and there's more. The long answer is there's more to come. But the short answer is yes, that is something I am already aware of, and it's on the list, because that's going to affect a lot of people. And you're right, I think when the governor announced this, they proudly said we're the first in the country to do this, which often means that there is a lot to fix when it's done that way, because the first out of the gate doesn't necessarily always mean the best at all. So does that answer the question a little bit, Chris?
So wow, this roundtable is just in time here. We all need to be looking into this. So, Corey, any idea if the AIA will be coming up with some guidance to for our firms?
I'll echo what Brandon said. It's so new, and we're just starting to get our arms around it. But the first thing that comes to mind is it might be an opportunity for the 3 organizations to work together and maybe bring somebody in, perhaps. And obviously, I haven't talked to Brandon or Nancy about this. I'm just sharing this in real time. But it may make some sense to bring the organizations together and bring somebody who's a pro at this to kind of give a rundown and a summary and maybe some best practices as we move forward. So instead of each doing 3 separate things, it might be an opportunity to collaborate.
Wonderful. Yes, Kristen.
One thing that I've noticed, and I was a little shocked at it at first, I went to my first in-person event this week for a luncheon, and they had liability waivers out on the table for everybody to sign. So, guidance from owners on how they want their employees and their BD professionals, can you sign this? Where's the liability going to lie? And then also with pre-bids, some of the owners and owners reps are requiring just to attend a pre-bid, like you have to fill out a health questionnaire. You have to turn that in, and you have to, sign away any liability just to attend.
I don't see Nancy on, but for ACEC, we do have a liability webinar coming up, and Corey and Brandon, I'll link up with you maybe afterwards and we can talk about it and see if this makes sense to offer this as well. But this liability webinar will be hosted by a lawyer, and he works with a lot of AEC firms and industries. But he's going to cover all of these losses, which should you have liability forms for people to come back, what course should you take if someone gets COVID in your office, what's that process look like? So I will connect with everybody after so we can talk a little bit more, because that's on August 6th. So.
Great, good timing. Any other discussion on COVID liability? Very real. So the next part, or the final segment of questions, deals with best practices. It's really a best practice exchange. I feel like we've been doing that through the course of what we, our discussions. So I just want to open the floor. It was scheduled for 25 minutes. We've got about 20 minutes that we could spend on it, but I'm going to ask if anyone has any comments about best practices and what's working well for you. We've had some great information here. I'm going to go on that Miro website right after this is over and check that product out. But any more discussion on virtual meetings, site visits and inspections? We've already touched on those. Project management, haven't really talked a lot about project management. Interviewing for projects, we've talked about that a little bit here. Interviewing remotely, it's going well for a few folks. Recruitment and training, we've talked about that, and helping mentor our interns. And here's one we haven't discussed during this. So equity, diversity, and inclusion. So the AIA has a tremendous move afoot here with equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it was rolled out pre-COVID. But what's anyone experiencing some successes in that area?
I can speak from a lot of different perspectives. I'm AIA Richmond's president, so we've been very mindful of the social unrest and responding to that. I think obviously the first piece in all of this is to listen and to understand, right? So AIA Richmond has been putting together a lot of great things in terms of that perspective. HKS was one of the first, and I would add justice to EDI, so that it's JEDI. We were one of the first firms to have a JEDI director for our firm, in Giselle Santos, and she has been amazing. We actually just had a listening session today for the whole firm to talk about the subjects and the barriers and how we get better, because we have to get better. We know we're not there, and so there's been a lot of conversations, and that's obviously the first step, but there needs to be action as well. So
fantastic, Nick, you're and thank you, Nick, for all you do for our local chapter. I'm in your chapter. Corey gives a thumbs up. I'm giving a thumbs up too, if I can find it. Anybody else want to comment on that?
So I'd have one short comment, and this is something that I've been advocating in the General Assembly for probably 8 years now, and I haven't been able to make any headway. But it's always baffled me that you cannot get a 4-year accredited, ABET accredited degree in a bachelor's degree in civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, fire protection engineering in any of Virginia's HBCUs. And until we can move the needle and kind of get some resources into our HBCUs so that we can build a bigger pipeline, I don't know that we're going to be able to solve this in our industry from an engineering perspective. And that's my opinion. And that's in deference to anybody that got an engineering degree from, Virginia Tech or UVA or like me, BMI. But you cannot get it at an HBCU in Virginia. And to me, that's a tragedy.
Of course, our architects are at advantage here with the wonderful program at Hampton University.
But that's not a state school.
No, it's not, but it is a historically Black institution.
I understand that, and I'll give you that, but that's not a state school. And that shouldn't be. So unless we can start to have these difficult conversations, I think it's going to be hard for us, to make any significant improvement in it. And we need to have these conversations.
This is Ken. Chris brings up a really important point. I was on the committee the last 2 years that is rewrote the NAB standards for accreditation, and underlying all that, we had 6 months of trying to understand what structures were in place that affected the ability of HSBCs, anybody, that affected making our industry more diverse. And there were many. And I'm proud to say that they got combed out and there's a new system, and but God, it takes 10 years to see the impact of the decisions that were approved last summer. So this is not a process that moves fast, and it's very frustrating to me. But you're right, Chris. I mean, anything I can do to help you on that, that's a big deal. Those structures that are in place, getting them changed, and then it takes time to get them, footing and horsepower and recruiting and all of those kind of things. It's just really, it's a huge challenge.
So Ed, I think the industry, I know we try every year, but I think the industry can do a lot by trying to advocate, for funding for an engineering program at an HBCU. And that's nothing against, Hampton. It's a great program, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Yeah.
Well, the state has the resources to do this. I was thinking about this, and last time I was at Hampton, I was made aware of a program that their A school was doing, and they were going out to high schools, and in some cases, I think elementary schools, and presenting architecture as a career to, quite frankly, at-risk children that might not have considered architecture as a career. Some of you might remember the architect Barbie that was out there, and they were able to give some of these dolls away for the younger kids. I guess really just to get their attention, but I'm a believer it has to start, before high school for our entire industry, really.
I would agree that it has to start before, high school. One thing that actually Hampton did this year was they did a virtual architecture camp where some of us were able to participate with that, and that was very good. Then also, Virginia is establishing a NOMA chapter, and one of their big pushes is something called Project Pipeline. And this year they're going to be doing a virtual form of that. And the idea is that it targets minority kids interested in architecture in kind of middle school, high school range, and provides them with some training in that.
Good stuff. Thanks, Ian. Good stuff.
Hey Ed, is Paul Battaglia around? Where is that man at? Because his wife is the one who runs the Archie camp at Hampton University, so he might be able to speak on that.
He's lurking. He's there.
Hello. Yeah, so it is. I'm happy to say my wife Laura, who organized the ARCA camp last year. It was a day camp that took place over a week for 8th and 9th graders. This year it had a virtual version, just like everything else in the world. So that's a really good touch, and there are a number of firms throughout the state and beyond that help to participate in that. Clark Nexon is one of them, so we're proud of that. Another comment in terms of pipeline issues, it is the early touch, and I do spend at least part of my year kind of out in K-12, right? So sometimes it's high school, but a lot of times it's elementary school. And I have a special place in my heart for Title I schools, if I can get invited there. I feel like, ours is, and I understand this is the AEC call, but these are kind of STEM and STEAM presentations. And obviously, mostly what I'm talking about is what I do, which is architecture. And I'll say that, it's a curious and interesting profession. It's not hard to do a pretty good job of inviting interest in the profession of architecture. But I'll also note, and this touches earlier the comments from Chris and Ken, then at some point, right, I'm asked, so how does one become an architect? I could be speaking to a room full of people who could be first generation high school grads, right? Some of those people in the room, this is going to be the first person from their family that's graduated high school. By the time I get done with NAB accredited degree programs and 5 years worth of internships and multiple licenses, if not an undergrad in something, and so it's like a 4+2 or a 4+3 master's perfected with a master's degree, that's tough. I can sometimes painfully, I can watch that same enthusiasm that we've just been stoking over that 40 minutes drain right back out of a lot of the faces. So I think more accredited programs is part of the answer. And I think revisiting a lot of the other ways to become an architect needs to be part of the answer. I'm a product of, and I've been back to teach in a number of NAB accredited programs. And I certainly, would be toward the front of the line for the Commonwealth's interest in defending and protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the people who are going to be subject to projects executed by licensed architects. That said, those paths are not necessarily for everyone, and I think we do well to consider them not to be the only paths. And so I think some of these other ways to become an architect are something we need to look more serious, look at more seriously, and perhaps champion or advocate for those possibilities.
Certainly a worthy of discussion, at least, since we did away with.
You'd be glad to know that a lot of that's codified in the new NAB standards for procedures and standards for accreditation. They've got stuff for community colleges, ways to speed it up, ways to simplify it. So, it's going to take a while, but every issue you talked about was addressed by the committee. One of the key people on the committee was Robert Easter in Hampton, right? So he was a genius in that effort. Wow. So it's a major rewrite and a major change.
Right. That's very good, Ken. And Robert Easter is also chairing the EDI, the newly established EDI committee at the state component level. So for AIA Virginia, and we're getting underway and figuring out what we're trying to get done and how we're going to measure that progress. I have a note to be in touch with you, Ken, about kind of how that NAB went, and I welcome that conversation and hope you do as well.
Cool.
Well, any further discussion on this? I'm glad we ended on this note. We're at our time where we were going to turn it back over to Corey for a wrap up, and I thank every one of you for being engaged. And Bob Lynch is raising his hand. Bob.
Thank you. There's a couple of things that I don't think we've talked about today. Maybe this is going to be deemed inappropriate, but I've been an architect for 45 years, and I feel that our profession, and for that matter, our whole construction industry, ought to have something to
So I just shot you a note.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, can I continue?
Yeah, I muted.
You.
I had to mute someone. I can do that.
The two issues that I think we as an industry might respond to, and I must say up front that it's probably a difficult conversation that we might have. But I think that we as an industry and as a profession ought to think about creating our own policy recommendations on two subjects. One of them is, should we open our schools and our businesses right away? And secondly, should we express our opinion about what we should be doing about preservation of our nation's history and its monuments and its memorials? Should we remain silent on these two issues? Thank you.
Well, thanks, Bob. Thanks for bringing up this, and I just guarantee you, everybody on this chat has an opinion about those issues that you mentioned, and it's generating consensus will be the difficult part.
Right.
To do this.
But I think we should try.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thanks for adding that. There being nothing else for the good of the order here, Corey, I'm gonna turn this back over to you. Thank you. I've had a ball today. Looking forward to when we can get back together in person. I really like the in-person thing a lot better.
Hey, Ed, thank you, my friend. You did an awesome job. And if we could give a round of applause in your video camera, that'd be great for Ed. You guys made him earn his money today. There's no question about it. I want to thank each of you who actually verbalized and participated either through the chat box or through mouth to make this conversation go the way that it did. And that's the only way we'll learn from each other. So I want to thank all of you for doing that. We have 5 minutes left. I won't take all 5 of that. I do want to have a moment to try to gather some data from you. So we have 3 polling questions that you can probably click on in real time very quickly as we have discussions about how to shape our joint owner forums. And so the first question that I'll pull up has to do with what sectors would you be interested in having conversations with those that hire you. And so I'm going to deploy this poll now. You should have a few seconds to fill it in. So what sector would you be most interested in having us bring to the table to obtain insight on future projects? You should be able to see that. And your choices are state and institutional, federal, healthcare, energy, or local government K-12. And I'll give a few more seconds. So we have 57% have voted thus far.
Should have had an option for all of the above, Corey.
We're only looking at the next 5 months. We're still in 2020. That's what we're going to try to focus on. All right. Sounds great. Well, thank you for that. And it looks like roughly a tie between the federal and the state institutional higher ed. All right. So thank you for that one. And then the second poll, let's see. We'll talk about the frequency. And so whether you think it should be done monthly, every other month, or quarterly. So we're trying to get a feel for how much is too much. All right, we'll give this a couple of more seconds. It looks like I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. It looks like every other month, roughly half people half of the people, every other month to quarterly. So definitely not monthly is what I'm seeing here. So, all right. And then the last question has to do with today's session. And we're asking for an honest grade here on a scale of 1 through 5, with 1 being worthless and 5 being exceptional value. How would you rate today's conversation? All right.
That's solid. That's solid. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we're going to be at about a 4 roughly. So I really appreciate that honest feedback. And with that being said, we're giving you 2 minutes back in your schedule. So thank you again. We look forward to getting together in the near future, next time with perhaps clients at the table. And enjoy your weekend. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Be safe, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.